that.
Okay. World's Finest with you on a Monday. We'll break down the wins over the Knicks and the Blazers without Nicola and Jamal. We'll talk about the big homestand coming up for the Nuggets, or chances at the 1 seed. Plus, is Peyton Watson going to be in the playoffs? I'm going to ask Adam Mares a tough question about the bench. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making us your first listen, being a part of our community. Appreciate you guys being with us. We are here Monday through Friday. For most weeks, I was not available on Friday because my kids are driving me up the wall, but most days we're available Monday through Friday, and we appreciate you being an everydayer. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. My name is Matt Moore. I'm senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. He's been on live streams for 4 days, which is we'll have to do paper, rock, scissors for. He's been on live streams for 4 days. I've been with my children for like 12 days. And so we'll have to see which one of us is more harebrained at this point. We'll talk about a lot today. We're going to talk about the Nuggets wins over the Knicks, because we didn't get to that one. The win over the Blazers. We're going to talk about the homestand coming up for the Denver Nuggets, a big homestand that they're now kicking off. We'll talk about that. Plus, we're going to get into the Malone's comments about the postseason and the rotation, which I thought was very interesting and Adam thought was very predictable. We'll get to all that and more on today's show. Adam, how you doing? What's up, man?
I'm good, man. Excited for this 5-game homestand. I actually think I think it's a big week for the Nuggets.
It is a big week for the Denver Nuggets. They have a very real shot at securing the number 1 seed in the Western Conference and securing home court throughout the playoffs, especially with the Thunder loss to the the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. They got absolutely housed in that one. Nuggets kicking off a homestand here, but let's go back a little bit. Good win over the Knicks. Knicks more short. My recollection is that they were more short-handed this time than they were when the Nuggets got caught at the end of that East Coast road trip. Am I correct in that assessment that OG Anunoby was he traded at that time? I can't remember.
No, he was traded. He did play, and they smacked the hell out of the Nuggets.
And then the Nuggets got their revenge. Let me ask you more. Nuggets got the win, and Jokic was amazing in that game. He was awesome. Some really interesting stuff in that in terms of, once again, my big kind of takeaway from that is it is different. One of the reasons I've been kind of battling with folks on Twitter is it is hard for me at this point right now to assess the Nuggets from a standpoint of, if you were just like, they're going to play well, like they're going to play to their capacity every playoff game. You can expect them to bring it. They're going to play well. Shots might fall, shots might not, but they're going to execute the way they need to in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, this is a double digit. Like, this is a double digit difference between them and most teams outside of Boston, quite honestly. Like, I think they're that much better than everybody else.
I don't know. But Denver doesn't win by double digits. That's kind of not their MO. So I don't know if that's true.
But part of the reason they don't, though, is because of the bench minutes and because they don't give that kind of effort, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of the thing is, over the course of that game, I saw Nikola Jokic's defense go from really bad to not great to not bad to real good. Like, it was like over the course, like there was an evolution there, and versus a guy like Jalen Brunson, that's really important, right? Like these dynamics.
You know what though, Matt? My thing is, I don't think any player in the NBA can go balls to the wall, both ends of the court for 48 minutes. I just don't think it's possible. I think Jokic carries as big of an offensive burden as any player in the NBA, and so he has to pick his spots defensively, and he very clearly does. I mean, the gap between Jokic's best and worst quarters in the regular season is really wide. It's wider than almost any other players, and I think the cerebral part of it, the angles and stuff, he's pretty good at, although there is an elevation of that in fourth quarters. Like, he elevates even that part of it, but more than anything, there's just a hustle. His hustle increases on the defensive end in the fourth quarter. And I just think it's natural. I think you have to, it's tough as an analyst, but if you think about like KCP, KCP is locked in defensively the whole time. He's not always locked in offensively. There's a lot of times where he's like, yeah, I'm just in the corner. I get the ball. I'm just giving it back to Yoke. I'm getting back to the corner. And that's probably by design because he's like, on defense, I've got to give everything I've got. So I got to make up for it somewhere else. So I think it's a little natural. And Yoke being the anchor, as all centers are the anchor of a defense, it means the Nuggets' defense is probably going to wax and wane over the course of a game.
Would you agree that there is a certain element to which Denver beats you by kind of like 1,000 cuts? Is that accurate to say?
What do you mean by it?
So what I mean by that is, I'm used to, like, I try and build these win profiles for these teams, right? Because it's just like what I've done across the entirety of my career. And like, I've gotten better at it every kind of year. And it's turned out to be like the best way for me to analyze things. But when we talk about 3-point gap, right? And you're like, I'm not really concerned about it. Or we talk about some of the other kind of elements that go into the point differential and things like that. One of the things that really kind of determines it is like the Nuggets level of execution is better than every other team's.
Here's what I would say. Yeah.
It's not like they execute X to get Y and Y is the reason why they're good. It's the process. Like it is
Right.
like it's how they run plays. It's the reads that they make. It's how they play together. It's their connectivity. Like it's not a very simple thing, I think, to distill down as to why the Nuggets are so much better than like that, why they're a class above outside of like the presence of Nikola, who's the best player in the world.
Here's what I would say, because you're almost, when you say that, the early part when you were setting the table, it almost sounds like you're describing the Phoenix Suns. They have a 3-point problem.
Yeah.
Right. But here's what's different. Denver can score at the rim as well as anyone. Yep. And Denver can score from 3 as well as almost anyone. There are a few teams that are just better than them, but they're a great 3-point shooting team. Michael Porter, KCP, Jamal Murray, you're not leaving those guys open for 3. The difference is Denver is most comfortable and almost designed to get floater zone shots and to get those pick and roll, pull up to the mid-range. Jamal Murray hits those. If you go, and those are shots the defenses are kind of built to concede more so than the other things. Yes. And if you go out of the zone, unlike with the Phoenix Suns, if you go out of the way to say, you know what, yeah, we got to step up on the Jokic floater. Well, all of a sudden now they're getting the dunks. Now they're getting the threes. Now they're getting those things. So I think it's more that Denver would get all dunks and threes if they could, but they're so comfortable taking those other shots that the moment you change your defense to try to take those away, then Denver's getting the high value shots. And that's the difference. And I think their defense, by the way, is very similar. Jokic, one of the reasons I believed in him as a good defender for several years is because I think he forces guys to make 3-footers into 5-footers, 5-footers into 7-footers. He just makes everything a little bit harder. And I think that's also true of Denver collectively defensively. So it's less 1,000 cuts, and it's more when you talk about a Phoenix or you talk about a Boston, I say they're not going to do that against Denver consistently. They're not going to get 25 threes consistently because Denver is good at forcing you out of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really good point, because I was actually talking about this on Buckets, the other podcast that I do for the Action Network, about the Heat's ability to make you play their game. Denver is exceptional at making you play their game. They're not going to play the game on your terms,
including defensively, I think. And that's what's happened to Boston both times they've played. Is it's like, why aren't we getting all those shots we usually get?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I do have is they're 30th in 3-point rate, which okay. They are 11th in 3-point percentage this season, which isn't as good. Like last season, they were a lights out shooting team, and this year, like they're a good shooting team. And
really, I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, and guess where they are at the rim?
Where?
11th. They're not top 10, and from the rim now
but rim percentage. It's more, I think, rim frequency. Is that frequency or a percentage?
That's percentage.
I don't know if percentage matters as much.
Rim frequency, they are 5th. So there you go.
Yeah.
And to your credit, guess what? They're the 3rd best team from the mid-range. On the other side, we'll talk about the win over the Blazers, about getting a win without Nikola and Jamal, their availability for tomorrow night's kickoff of the homestand versus the Grizzlies. Plus, we'll take a look at that homestand and what that looks like as Denver does face 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to be just living. I might as well get a tent and live outside the Ball Arena this week for the homestand. We'll talk about that on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to some specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. We're also brought to you today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back here on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. If you're hanging out with us in the chat here on Sunday night for World's Finest, Victor, 5-ish is with us. Bubbles, Buzzer Beater, Freddie's in here. Lots of folks hanging out with us here on a Sunday night. Nuggets did get the win over the Portland Trailblazers without Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. I wanted to get I did not see the DNVR postgame show. I want to get your general thoughts on that game and what you thought of it.
The Blazers game?
Yes.
I don't have a lot of thoughts, man. That post-game show would have been 5 minutes if I could have. I'd say this: Christian Brown played really well. It's a trend that has been true since the All-Star break. He's been playing really well. His confidence is there. More importantly, his defense has been back. So that's one of the big stories for me. And then also, this isn't a big thing. It's easy to be overstated, but that was a lot of just a culture win. Like, Jokic and Murray don't go. You buy them 4 extra days off, which I think is huge. Then you get a homestand. I actually think it was an incredible strategic gamble by the Nuggets that paid off, because to get Jokic and Murray 4 days off with 12 to go or 13 to go, whatever it is huge. It's huge. Every team would love to give their star players 4 days off. The fact that they got them and then a 5-game homestand, I just think it sets the table really, really nicely for this next week and a half for the Nuggets.
Yeah, that Blazers team started five rookies. And it was funny because I described it as, I was like, they're punting this game. And everybody's like, they're going to win anyway. And I was like, well, maybe. I was like, they can win, But, like, anytime that you decide to sit Jokic and Murray, then you're basically, like, you are changing the win probability, is what I would say. Like, you were still – I actually really like the decision to sit that game, because it's not necessarily relevant for tiebreaker, because the Wolves games are still up in the air. You can win tiebreaker without that game. Division record is tight anyway.
It helps, though.
It does help. It is helpful for sure. And it's like a spot where, like, I am glad to see them reaching a point where they don't need this game, which honestly brings us to tomorrow. Jokic and Murray are questionable. I kind of assume that they'll play. I just think they got on the night off and they're on their injury report, so it doesn't look sketchy that they go from, like, can't play at all versus the Blazers. They're back. But
I would say with Murray, though, just because he rolled an ankle in the last game, that he's the one I just don't know who knows about. I mean, maybe it was nothing. They say he walked out, on his own. Everything was fine. But that he's the one guy that I just wouldn't be surprised, especially when you consider, look, Memphis, for a tanking team, is still scrappy and still, like, brings it. But Denver can win without Murray. So I could see Denver making the calculation of, all right, after that, you got Phoenix, you got the Timberwolves, you got some big time games coming up right after that. So I could see a scenario where Denver tries to buy him an extra game.
Yeah. Late game versus the Suns on Wednesday. Then Friday night versus the Wolves, and a huge game. That's a huge game. Sunday versus the Cavaliers, and then they wrap up the homestand versus the Spurs. So Grizzlies, Suns, Wolves, Cavs, Spurs. What record do you think they finish with on this homestand?
To me, it's so important. And I kept saying that they can make it easy on themselves. If they do their work early, you can relax a little bit, although you're probably going to still have to run through the tape, but the pressure or whatever can get to you. I think 4-1 is on the table for them. 5-0 is on the table for them. 4-1 would probably be what I would say. San Antonio and Memphis to me should be wins. Phoenix, Minnesota, Cleveland. Those are all three really tough ones. Actually, you know what? 4.5 is the line for me. Denver's playing really well, and I think they can take care of business here. And if they did, my prediction is they would be up 2 or 3 games on Minnesota by the end of it, which again, it allows you to breathe. You're still going to have to play great down the stretch, but it allows you to have a little bit of a cushion ahead of that 3 seed.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they probably go 5-0. Quite honestly, I think they're gonna be mad about that Suns game. They're gonna be pissed.
Why?
Because they lost the last one at home.
Oh, right.
They take those games personally.
Yeah,
I will say that this team, they don't have like a great memory, but like
against Phoenix they do.
This one is recent enough. If it's in the same month,
yeah.
NBA teams in general, and this one in particular, will be like, they beat us at home.
Yeah.
They don't beat us at home, right?
I think that Minnesota game is going to be the same, by the way. I think that one's going to feel like a playoff game. I would bet both teams bring full focus and energy to that one.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a great game. That is huge for the Wolves in terms of everything they've done this season. Spurs game should be a laugher. Grizzlies game should be easy. Someone mentioned that Desmond Bane's banged up. Like, they're banged up again. There's a bunch of guys out. Although I will credit the Grizzlies, who are playing Desmond Bane and playing Jaren Jackson, and Brandon Clark's coming back this week. They could have just shut those guys down. So I actually am kind of like impressed that they would actually bring those guys back and play.
By the way, Minnesota for that game Friday, they only play Detroit this week. So they have 2 games in 5 days. They get a couple of days off coming into their first game against Detroit, and then a day off before the Nuggets one. So they should be well rested. They just got Rudy back. Like that's going to be a really, really, really intense game. I would buy tickets to that game if I were you.
Yeah, that one's going to be a great game. We got a little bit of time here before the break. I want to clarify my position on the Nuggets. The Nuggets have the most championship equity. The Nuggets.
You've been a little sneaky down on them lately, and I'm kind of surprised. Is it a zig while everyone's zagging kind of move here?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is like people are like he's just a skeptic or he's contrarian, and I get it. I think the best way to kind of classify it is that I'm typically like, when the Pistons lost 28 in a row, I was like, they won't be the worst team in the league by the end of the season, right? Like, because
they were only like 2 games ahead of all the other terrible teams.
Well. And just like, you're not going to play that bad forever. And I'm so aware of how long the season is.
Although the Pistons are the worst team in the league right now.
I thought the Wizards were behind them.
They're one a game up.
Okay.
Either way, it's close. The Wizards on a little bit of a win streak here, 2 in a row.
Hey, there you go. Good for the Wizards. I said the Nuggets weren't going to win 50 games. I was wrong. They won 50 this week. They won it in March.
Well, somebody brought this to our attention on social media tonight, but we just celebrated that they got to 40 before 20, and then they got to 50 before 22, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. Somebody kind of asked on Twitter, and you responded to it about the question of like peaking too early. This is not a peaking too early question.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried about the Nuggets peaking too early, because like I actually don't think that they're peaking. Like, I actually don't think that they've played like that awesome over this 14-2 stretch, which is all the more impressive because they've won anyway. Usually when you play like this, you get caught. And that's what I kind of predicted, was like, they're going to slack off. They're not going to be as sharp, and they're going to get caught. And they didn't. They just didn't get caught because they're too good.
I think Denver played remarkably well in the first portion of this, including against Boston. I think after the Boston game.
Yes.
So if you almost break this streak into 2, the first half of it, I think, was very impressive. The second half of it has been, to your point, it's almost like they found their rhythm, and so they were able to like know exactly how much energy has been needed in every game. And the 2 they lost came from that miscalculation. I mean, both of those games, they played with fire, stormed back at the end, and came up just a tiny bit short, where it was like, yeah, that's what you get for approaching the game the way you did.
Yeah.
But you're right. That Denver hasn't necessarily been impressive for 48 minutes for a while.
But that's also,
and it hasn't been needed.
That doesn't mean I'm down on them. Like, if you're like, who's going to win the title right now? It's the Denver Nuggets. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all about like margin of victory, and is it going to be 16-4? Is it, how easy is it going to be? How dominant is it going to be? That's the only thing I'm arguing here, because I live in this stuff. Like, I live in this stuff every day. And so I argue about these semantic questions. But if we just like take a step back, like, no, I'm not down on the Denver Nuggets. They're 14-2 since the All-Star break. They're the best team in the Western Conference. They have the most championship equity in the league. They should be the favorites to win the NBA title, which is crazy because Boston has the 4th best SRS of all time. Like, I still will take Denver. I'll take Denver. Yeah. So I did need to kind of clarify that. On the other side, I want to get into the playoff rotation and Malone's comments. We're far out there, Zeke Nagi, and more with Adam here as we wrap up our conversation here on Locked On Nuggets. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000. Demons and Goblins, the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. You're just choosing more or less than the chosen stats. That's it. No complicated stuff to deal with. It's super easy. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA with promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, Victor's given it to me in the comment section. He says the Nuggets will go 16-2 in the playoffs this year.
It's pretty. I mean, if they did that, it would be quite a statement.
Yep. Okay. So Michael Malone the other night basically said that he knows Reggie Jackson and Christian Brown are in the playoff rotation, and that's it. And I was pretty surprised at that. You were not, because for me, I would be like, Reggie Jackson and Peyton Watson are in the playoff rotation, and after that, I don't know. You were not surprised by that statement from him. Let's talk about that, and then we'll hit Zeke.
I'm not surprised by the statement. To me, it feels like Michael Malone gets his calendar out at the beginning of the year, and he makes little notes throughout it. And one of them is, hey, March 23rd, light a fire under Peyton Watson's ass, like to make him remind him that nothing's guaranteed and you've got to earn it. I mean, do you remember at training camp this year, or was it media day, when it might have been in the first week of training camp or media day, I don't remember, where he basically came out and said, if guys think that they have a spot in here just given to them, they're crazy, right? Like, and he was calling out Peyton. We all knew who he was talking about. Like, hey, Peyton does not have a spot. And then we all thought, like, oh my God, is he not even is Malone going to give him the hard treatment? And then he played 20 minutes in the first game of the season. So it was, to me, Malone does these things through the media, and all coaches do. But Malone, I think, is very well timed in his look. 12 games to go. I don't want to have any nerves about playing you these minutes. I want you to be ready, and I want you focused on the things we need you focused on. And by the way, I think Christian Brown has done a very good job of this over the last 4 weeks of throwing everything else out and saying, I got to defend. I got to be the best defender on the court, and I got to stay within in the lane. I just think this is Malone's way of saying 100% energy from you every night. Do the thing we need from you. Forget everything else for the next 3 months.
It's crazy a little bit to me. Okay, so here's like this feeds into like an existential thing I have. The playoffs are different than the regular season. We know that. We also know that you build towards the playoffs with the regular season, and that historically regular season success has been the best determinant of playoff success. In that, like, this is where I always get to with like, hey, if you don't make the top 3 seed, you're probably not making the finals. Just probably not. You're almost definitely not winning the title, and you're probably not making the finals. That's what history says, right? All these kind of markers that I come up with to kind of like put things in a historical context. And all that matters is right now, because history is made all the time. But the point here is that Peyton Watson was the better player than Christian Brown for 4 months out of 6. And Christian Brown's been better for 1 month. I have a hard time with this being like, well, I know Christian's in there. And I'm like, I don't know. What if Christian goes back to the dude that he was in December? Because that guy wasn't good.
I see what you're saying here. And again, I think you have to take Malone's comments with a little bit of a grain of salt. Like I said, I think that it's a little bit more of a motivational tactic. I saw somebody put it, and it might have been one of our chat. I think it might have been Grace, or I don't remember, somebody that's always in the chat. said something to the playoffs are going to emotionally test you way more than Malone's calling you out in a post game. So if Peyton can't handle that, then he's going to fold in the playoffs, something to that extent. And that's just how I feel about it. I feel like this is Malone's challenge to Peyton to say, look, man, it's no longer a marathon. We're in the sprinting portion and you're still on marathon pace, which I think is actually true. Peyton Watson was kind of mediocre defensively at best in that Blazers game where he should have stood out. That was enough. I remember Tim Conley telling me this about Will Barton years and years ago about guys don't always seem to understand what opportunity is. Like, oh, star players are out. All right, get to go out there and play my no, it's not your normal thing. You're going to get extra minutes tonight. This is your chance to show that if we need you for extra minutes, you have it. This is your chance. That's opportunity. Christian Brown saw that game as opportunity and absolutely crushed it. I thought Peyton Watson played more or less like he has played on average for the last few. And I just think that was Malone's way of saying, hey, nope, we're in the sprint portion. Pick up that speed. I don't think it was anything more than that. I'd be shocked if Peyton Watson wasn't in the playoff rotation.
So Zeke Nagi gets his tail kicked on the offensive glass versus Dallas. And that's been like the one thing he's done this year is he's put a lot of effort into rebounding.
Gave us the most hilarious Malone thing I've ever seen in my life. Just grab it.
Grab the ball. And then he is poof, vanished. Where are you at with Zeke Nagi? Because that unit was working and like they had found something with Zeke and his versatility at even the power forward spot in minutes next to Jokic was something we were saying. All right, are we done? Is that over?
Yeah. He had the weirdest one to me was his comments after a game. I don't remember which one it was, or before a game when he was asked about his availability, and he says, "I don't know. I have no idea." And the way he said it to me was not like, we have to play it by ear. We're seeing the it was more pointed to that. So again, it could be nothing, but I've been around this league long enough to know that coaches have weird. They're like, well, who was it? Brandon Ingram. Earlier in the year, there was one where the coach, Willie Green, was asked about him and he said something like, I have to imagine his health is day by day, but I don't know. And I remember it being a big thing and it became a big story. I'm not saying that Zeke's not hurt. I'm saying that Malone's frustration with that question to me hinted at more ambiguity. And now that he's out for a fourth straight game.
Yeah.
It's almost not surprising to me. It's almost like there's something else there that is underneath.
How does that make you feel about the playoff rotation, given the absence of a lot of bigs in the front court for Denver?
Well, Denver didn't really need it last year. I mean, I do think that Jeff Green's size against LeBron was an underrated factor in the Lakers series. Like you did, not that he did a great job, but he was a person that could do that job. At least, like doing the job poorly is better than not having anybody to do the job at all. But and actually, I thought Jeff wasn't even that poor in that one. I thought he was actually pretty good. So I do think there is something to. I don't think it's nothing, but at the same time, Denver has Peyton Watson now to fill a role defensively, and I think that you're just going to rely on Aaron Gordon a lot. I think this is going to be an exhausting playoffs for Aaron Gordon. And it's funny to say, Matt, I've had this theory before. Remember, Denver's first 4 series in the Jokic era went 7 games, and I kept saying, there's a fatigue factor when you have to go 7 every round. You need to get work done early, and then they win 5 and 4. They win 5, 6, 4 this last time, and I think it was a big part of why they won the championship. I think Aaron Gordon it was 20 games last year. 24 games might be the max. If you tell me Denver needs 26, 27 games to win the title, it's like, I don't know if they have that in them because that means Aaron Gordon's playing 40 minutes 27 times. That might be too much.
Yeah, I mean, look, I continue to be like, when I say Denver's going to tail off at some point, this is kind of where I get to is I'm just like, they need to sit Aaron. Aaron needs to not play a lot in April. He just needs to not. I'll just say this: as somebody that's in the locker room after these games, that playoff run, you're right. It takes a lot out of Aaron Gordon to play center. That's hard.
Yeah,
and it's not. The NBA is hard, but it takes a physical toll on him. That he's tough enough, and he'll do it, and he won't complain, and he'll bring it every single game. But you're going to get diminishing returns if you don't make sure that he's healthy. because
Yeah.
when he is less than 100%, you can tell. Remember the post All-Star slump a little bit last year when he had the shoulder injury? He was not the same dude. You need AG to be 100%. You need the starting five, right?
Yeah. You need it for sure. You do. If you're Denver, for sure you do.
But I also think that there's different loads on the starting five. Like Yoke obviously has the most, but also, to be quite honest, and like they treat him, in my opinion, like this. They treat Jokic like a tank because he just doesn't miss games.
Yeah.
And some of that's probably him being like, "Hey, Joker, you're hobbling. Like it looks like the ankle's bothering you. You could sit." And he's like, "No, I'm good." 30-15. Right. He's a tank. Jamal gets banged up, and that's okay. Like it is unfair to hold anybody to Yoke. That, in my opinion, his durability is of the many remarkable things about him that should be up there. He doesn't miss games.
Yeah.
Jamal misses like a normal amount of games for an NBA star, NBA primary ball handler, right? KCP can get banged up. He's taking a lot of hit. Like he
plays a lot too. KCP is active a lot,
and he runs through screens extremely hard.
Yeah.
But AG, I think, has like AG versus MPJ. AG has a much more physical toll on him. And so, like, I think it would behoove them in April to get him some time.
Yeah.
Because the closing stretch, if you look at it, San Antonio is the last game of the homestand. At the Clippers, that one's, I guess, could matter. Atlanta, home, easy. At Utah, easy. Versus the Wolves, big game. At Spurs, at Memphis, those are easy. Like, we'll know the seedings, I think, probably after the Wolves game, April 10th. So...
the only thing about I think they need to get him rest, not in April. They might need to find a spot for him to get rest before that, because I'm less worried. You get a week off between the last game of the regular season and the playoffs. Because of the play-in, you get a lot of time off, and I think that will be enough. But I do worry that there's probably 2 games. If I had it perfectly, maybe he rests this Memphis game, and then he rests maybe the last Memphis or San Antonio game or Utah or something. I just feel like you could find one other spot in there, but I don't know that necessarily needs to be in April, because you already get that week off. And for a lot of these guys, as long as they're not injured, a week off is more than enough physically to like recover and mentally.
After going through this last year, one more question for you. Would you rather have the 1 or the 2? And I know the home court is such a big deal for Denver. I know how unstoppable they are. I know how much that could, like, the Wolves getting the 1 could matter a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it's going to be the Wolves. It looks like it's either going to be Denver or OKC. And I will just say this, that no one, like, there are people on my timeline tonight watching the Thunder Bucks game that were just like, Thunder aren't getting out of the first round. Like, that's like a common thing I saw on the timeline tonight was like, the Thunder are not going to get out of the first round. And if they don't get out of the first round, guess who automatically has home court throughout the rest of the playoffs?
I'll say this. This 2 or the 3 to me matters or the 2 seed to me is toughest because you face Minnesota in the second round. And I do think Minnesota is going to be tough. Okay. I will say this, though. I don't know if it's better to face them in the second or wait till the third. I don't know if they're going to make it that far. I just feel like in most years, I feel a certain way about a matchup. And this year I don't. I just look at it and I go, it's going to be hard no matter what. Yeah. There's pros and cons to every outlook. And I think Denver wants to play well. And I do think they should try to get home court advantage because I think it matters. And if they got the 1, I will say this. I do think there's something to the 1 seed. If you ask me the second round, would you rather play Minnesota even with home court advantage, or would you have home court advantage against the Clippers or Pelicans winner? I'd say, yeah, that sounds way better to me. Go there because that route sounds a little bit nicer. But all of these margins are too small for me to really fret about.
I will say one small thing, and this is the first round. I kind of prefer the 2 because you get to find out who the 7 is on Tuesday.
Man, interesting point. Very interesting point.
Last year, they found out Wolves on Friday night, and they had 2 days they prepped for a week for both scenarios. But like the coaching staff talked about, like you have to prep for 2 teams.
Well, the one thing I will say, though, is that's 2 playoff games. You're getting a very exhausted team, likely with 3 traveling to 3 cities. It's almost like you're catching a team on a 3rd game of a 3-game road trip, only their playoff intensity. Yeah, so Denver won by 30 points in game 1 against Minnesota last year. And I think that is one of the advantages of playing the 1-8.
Yeah, that's true. All right, it's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Swipe will be with you tomorrow. We'll be back for World's Finest on Wednesday. We'll have you caught up all throughout this homestand. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll talk to you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.